This meeting is being recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can we start this session now, Dr. Dharini? I think we can start this session now. So, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Echo session. So, today, sorry for the delay. We had 10-15 minute delay due to technical issues, but we are now starting the session. So, I would like to ask Dr. Dharani to start this session now, and I have started recording.
Good evening. Sorry for the interruption. Some network issues again at my end. So, sincere thanks to all of you who have joined this session in great numbers. I think the topic is very lucrative. Sincere thanks to Ms. Anisha from the team BD part to have accepted to do this video demonstration for all our nurses. Pick lines, port lines are something that we use day in and day out, and it is very important that we know the basics of it. So, without wasting much time, I request Anisha to start the session. And I request all of you to post the queries in the group chat box so that we can take it up at the end. Thank you.
Is my voice audible?
Yes, ma'am, but screen
Yes.
is not visible, ma'am.
Yeah, I am sharing my screen.
Sure.
Yes. Okay.
Yes, it's visible, ma'am.
Anisha, have you started? Anisha?
I did share my screen and I was actually talking. Am I not audible?
Mic was
You're audible
mute.
now. You're audible now. You can start now.
Okay. Uh, okay.
Anisha, I think you have muted again.
I think someone is muting me, I believe, because once I start talking, I am actually confirming whether I'm audible because I couldn't hear anything.
So, ma'am,
Okay, let me.
I think you are sharing audio as well, due to which your mic is getting muted.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Can
once
you?
you stop sharing the video, na, then you can unmute yourself and then you can start talking, or you can share video later, because
Okay.
both.
Am I audible now?
Yeah, you are audible now.
Perfect. So there is this thing, which icon, which I'm showing. Okay, fine. So a very, very good evening, everyone. So without further ado, I would like to take you through this topic, what we have actually intended to, to understand, especially on central venous axis. So today it is all line management. You can name it as line management. You can name it as care and maintenance of central lines, or the care and maintenance of the central venous access devices. So, which is of a very relevant and important topic to all of you. So, as Dr. Dharani did mention, at the end of the session, I would request all of you to please, I would request to post your questions or queries related to CVAD in the chat box. So, at the end of the session, we'll definitely take you through that, and will be answering to all of the queries at the end. So, when I talk, the main objective of today's topic, what are we going to discuss is, let us understand the CVAD care, the types of CVAD in the hospital, and what is a culprit? What are the culprits which can actually cause an harmfulness of your vascular access or the CVAD in the hospital? Understanding the CVAD kit, this is also called as the dressing kit. Yes. So, what else is required in terms of maintenance? Be it a needle cap change, be it flushing, be it locking. And something else I wanted to also understand and talk about, a creation or the effectiveness of CVAT team in a hospital. Finally, yes, the Q&A. Okay. Let me start with the basic. Why do we need a VAD? What are the indication or the uses? Why a CVAD is required or VAD is required in your hospital? As it is already mentioned, definitely it is required to give in chemotherapy, medication, antibiotic, nutrition, it is also intended for hydration. Definitely certain CVADs are used for what do you call, the CT contrast, which can be given through a CVAD, your monitoring basis for dialysis. So for all these for all these important things, we do use vascular access devices, and we will need to maintain. So as you all know, like 70 to 85% of patients who comes in the hospital are either cannulated for a shorter period of time, and they might require a longer period vascular access in order to give in all these things, be it anything, depending upon the stay of these patient, if it is a shorter stay, intermediate, or a long stay. Okay, so before this, main thing what we do in an hospital, or main thing what when the patient comes into your hospital, we put in a cannula. What are the complications which we might get, or which might be surprising to most of you, would be one thing which is mostly alarming, which is again not reported, underreported in most of your hospitals, would be the ratio of phlebitis, the ratio of the what do you call, extravasation or infiltration. So I think right now in NABH we will have to definitely give the data of the number of cases which of infiltration as well as extravasation which is happening in the hospital. Also need to do an RCA and a kappa for all these cases in order to we will also need to ensure that all these cases will be reduced in terms of extravasation, infiltration, as well as phlebitis, and bring down to zero. So, and something else is also alarming when we put in a smaller cannula, when we give in drugs which is highly vesicant or irritant in nature. Few of them might cause all these complications. We wanted none of our patient to undergo these complications. Definitely it doesn't seems to be beautiful. It is not at all a beautiful picture, I would say. So we do not want any of your patients, be it an adult, pediatric, primaries, smaller ones, to have all these complications. So how do we prevent that? First thing, yes, after understanding the need of central venous, the vascular access line, the clinicians needs to switch over immediately as per the need, the depending upon the stay of the patient, depending upon the drugs we given, the therapy we given, the unit they place. So after understanding, we will need to put in, or we will need to understand the type of the central venous access which needs to be placed for all these patients. After placing, what would be the culprit? So as you all know, these are the types of lines which will be placed for all of their patients depending upon the requirement. And these vascular access lines or vascular access devices are divided into peripheral as well as central. I talk about the basics. When I talk about peripheral and central, peripheral lines are nothing but the shorter cannulas or catheters, you name it, anything, few name it as Venflon, and we put in the arm or at the accessing your EJ. So accessing the smaller vein is your peripheral access devices. There is another access devices which is called as midlines or mid lines. Again, it is a peripheral access devices. Though it is little longer, it doesn't reaches your SVC. So the other one, what we have in our hospital is the central venous access devices, which is divided into tunneled, non-tunneled, and implantable chemoports. So tunneled is nothing but the catheter is placed under aseptic method, and the patient is actually given an anesthesia to place all these tunnel catheters, and a small tunneling is done to access the central lines. So that is called as a tunnel. Examples of tunnel catheters, one is all your Hickman's catheter, wherein it is ideally used for BMT cases and long-term cases. A part of tunnel or an implant is another a port, which is an implant which is placed in your chest. A small socket is created and the port is being placed, and then the catheter is accessed in your major veins. Coming back to non-tunnel catheters are nothing but all these catheters wherein the major veins are accessed directly and the line has been placed. Few among them are the lines which is placed centrally, accessing your internal jugular vein. Another is your subclavian PICC line, wherein brachial, basilic, and the cephalic lines are accessed. femoral catheter. So these are the few examples of non-thenar catheters. What is our main goal? Yes, this is something which all of you would have faced or are facing in your hospital. It is called as line related. I can hear few noises. If you could kindly mute, thank you. So yeah, so these are few things which is happening in your hospital. One is like line related infection, such as CLAPSIs, CRBSIs, and also something which is underreported or not being reported is line related complications. So let us all understand what needs to be done to prevent all these things. The main pathogenesis behind CRBSC is all these. One is through your extraluminal luminal spread or intraluminal spread. Extraluminal is if the catheter is being contaminated. Yeah, it is mentioned as hospital staff, clinicians handling the line. If there is any contamination or through improper cleaning of the site, can also cause infection or complications. Next is your intraluminal. It could be either the secondary infections, also the manipulation, also because of the infusate, improper cleaning, improper flushing, can also cause the barrier creation, so that there is a chance of all these complications. So what is the plan? So we will need to have a plan for a vein victory plan of prevention of these complications. How do we do that? That is what we are going to actually see. There are data in Indian scenario wherein we have seen the number of CVC line or BSI incidences, which is very high than any other rates, which is also mentioned there. So, what is our plan? So, it is better to prevent rather than repairing it. As you all know, there are two bundles in the centerline prevention. One is insertion bundle. The care starts from there, wherein the line needs to be placed in the strict aseptic technique. Barriers needs to be done. All these things. Then comes the maintenance bundle. So the policies, the procedures, or the best practices what I am going to discuss here is from all of these organizations, from SHIA, from CDC, INEC, INS, APEC, from all these organizations, wherein they talk about the line handling, the number of days it needs to be used, what needs to be done to prevent or to reduce the chances of complications. Okay. Major elements in bundle approach. First thing I would tell you is training, training, training. Yes, of course, all of you definitely know about the importance of training. Though I attended training or all of you attended training today, but it is better to have a series of training in your hospital in terms of line handling, in terms of CRBSI prevention. So this can create we can create an echo so that we will be on the page, so that the chances of mismatching of all these things can be reduced. Second thing is, how do we select a catheter insertion site, the choice of insertion site, like, or the type of catheter what we use. So if there is a long term, it is really important we choose a catheter as per the policy, as well as which is intended for a longer use. Say for example, central venous catheter, according to Indian scenario, we can use it for a central venous catheter is inserted centrally, accessing the IG or subclavian, can be used up to 7 days or 21, not more than that, because there is a chances of biofilm formation. So instead, if the patient required a long term go lines or port access devices, nor a Hickman catheter, which can be used for these patients, even if the patient is going back to the home. So these are few examples. Definitely, we'll have to adhere to hand hygiene practices. I would never say thanks to COVID, but again, COVID is somewhere we did understand the importance of hand hygiene, all these measures. So right now, most of the hospitals do have 100% compliance towards hand hygiene practices. And aseptic technique, non-touch aseptic technique is something which has popped up recently and through Infusion Nursing Society, which needs to be adhered or practiced by all of your clinicians. Yes. Second is understanding about the skin preparation, frequency of changing the catheter. That is what we are going to see in the forthcoming slides. Why do we need a needle-free connectors, needle-less connectors, needle connectors, and what is the changing protocol or changing criteria of all these catheters? Pre-fill, non-fill saline syringes, flushing, locking technique also plays a major role. Finally, the placement of the VATT. Okay, how do we select all these catheters is actually important. Maximum sterile barrier during insertion as well as maintenance. Next one is dressing change. Okay, let's talk about dressing change wherein post insertion of all these central lines, be it name it any central lines. First dressing of each central line is ideally appreciated if you do the dressing within 24 to 48 hours. Rational. So everything will have a rational behind it. The reason of first dressing needs to be done within 24 to 48 hours is, yes, when you place a central line, a small nick or a tear over the skin is created, and the fluid or the blood might ooze through the catheter, through the site, and wherein a gauze is placed or transparent blessing praised in any of your hospitals. So that is again a very good medium or a source of infection, a source wherein the infections, it's a very good source wherein the bacterial growth can happen. So it is greatly appreciated if you actually do the dressing, the first dressing of insertion. A post insertion would be ideally within 24 to 48 hours, and then the routine insertion, sorry, the dressing can be done with a transparent semi-permeable membrane. Semi-permeable dressing can be done every 7 days once, and again definitely your hospital policy, it could be either 5 days, but according to the Infusion Nursing Society or these guidelines say every seventh day the dressing needs to be changed. Again, there is another clause here. Whenever it is soiled, if you think it is soiled, tampered, loosened, visibly soiled with blood or any body fluids, no water, anything, when you do a dressing, it needs to be changed definitely because it is compromised. And if the patient is being sent back to the home, that is where health education of all these patients plays a major role of how do you maintain these catheters. You will need to educate the patient that if there is any sign of removal or if it is being tampered or loosened, the patient needs to come back. If any of your central line has been sent, so they'll have to come back for cleaning as well as changing. Okay, so as I mentioned, aseptic or non-touch aseptic technique needs to be followed. First thing is better to handle any of your central lines, be it if you're given a medication, fluids, you are giving a flush, you are connecting fluids, you are giving TPNs, or you're connecting blood. It is better to use or wear a sterile glove or an ETO'd glove while handling this central lines. Also, while removing the old dressing, when we talk about dressing change, we will need to remove the old dressing and change it to the newer one. That is where actually you will have to use a clean nor an ETO dressing. When you use this, we will need to ensure that we do not touch the insertion site. So it is better to glove yourself, get gloved yourself before accessing or before holding or handling any of these central lines. When we talk about what solution we will need to use to cleanse the area, definitely when you do a dressing change, the central line insertion site needs to be cleansed, or the nearby sites needs to be cleansed with any solution. So ideally 2% of chlorhexidine and 70% of isopropyl alcohol needs to be used while cleaning the site, the insertion site. Few patients will not be compatible with chlorhexidine. That is where we can use betadine solution for these patients, definitely. And if the patient requires skin protectant, yes, there are skin protectant which is readily available in the market, which can be used or sprayed before actually dressing up with a transparent dressing. When I talk about shaving, yes, of course, shaving, it is not ideally practiced in terms of male patient because shaving can cause abrasions. Again, very much area wherein the bacterial deposition can happen. So it is better not to shave. Rather than, you can go ahead, you can clip these area and then use the transparent dressings. Chlorhexidine impregnated catheter dressing versus non-chlorhexidine impregnated catheter. There are studies and data which did prove the chances of infection has become lower when you use chlorhexidine impregnated dressing. But definitely, if you cleanse the area, use an aseptic manner, proper dressing, regularized dressing, handling of all these lines are done perfectly, I think we need not go ahead with an impregnated. Rather, we can follow all these aseptic technique in order to prevent or bring down the chances of uh, down all these chances of infections or complications. Dressing kit, definitely everyone will have your own style of having a dressing change kit. But what I would like to reinforce here is two things. One is the usage of central line cleaning devices such as chlorhexidine. It is better to have a separate one uh, intended for any of your central line dressing change, wherein, for example, if you have a chlorhexidine, any brand chlorhexidine, 2% of chlorhexidine bottle, it is better to have a separate one in each of your unit to use it for your patient. Or it is really appreciated if you have a single own for the patient, and it should be dated definitely and used until the instruction for use needs to be done. So it is better to have that. I would like to reinforce that as well. Okay. Next comes in the changing of the connectors. So first is, how do you choose a connector, which is very important. It is better. Uh, it is better we can actually choose. Okay, sure. So it is better we can actually choose these devices in terms of closed port system. It's bet we'll need to choose. We will need to identify whether it has got a space, it doesn't have a space, it doesn't have a cervixes. The reason is, once we cleanse, ideally when we handle all these catheters, we will need to cleanse or clean the tip of the catheter using alcohol based products. So while we clean that, the area should be flat. If the area is not flat, as mentioned in all these pictures, chances of, again, the bacterial contamination or deposition, or the medication can also, the fluids or the blood can also get deposited in these dead spaces. Again, there is a chances of bacterial growth in all these dead spaces. So it is better to choose the right type of needle free connector if it is practiced in your hospital. So what does the CDC or the INS guideline says? It can be kept up to 7 days if you're sending back the patient back home. Okay, this is only for the patient when you're sending back the patient home, and the patient comes in every 7 days for dressing. If not, if the patient is at the hospital, you need not change all these add-ons in a center line, not more than 96 hours. But if it is compromised, nor tampered, or if you have a blood stain collection at the end or inside the catheter and is not there, it's there for like long, it is better to change it immediately. That is where compromised term comes in place. Yes, stopcock, non-stopcock, this is something outdated, but still few of us are following. So chances of contamination or the potential entry of microorganism will be high in most of the cases. It is better to eliminate that to reduce the chances of infection. Okay, so scrubbing the hub, two techniques which is published by these two Dr. Simons as well as Kaelher. So they do say that proper holding and scrubbing at the end of the catheter do actually increase or decrease, sorry, decrease the chances of contamination, wherein a simple alcohol swab which is readily available everywhere, which is 70% of isopropyl alcohol, can be used to cleanse the area with a softer pressure, holding the hub, turning it back and forth 15 seconds, if you have a count on it, waiting until it is dry, and then giving out all these medication will decrease the chances of infection, and it also eliminate the chances of infection. A very simple technique which can be adhered to all of us. When you wanted to access, you take out a alcohol swab, cleanse it, and yes, it is ready to use, which can be utilized and which can be done. Right now, I think I have seen few hospital doing an audit of scrubbing the hip separately, just like an audit which they do for hand hygiene, in order to understand the compliance of handling all these catheter, which is much appreciated in most of the other hospitals. Very more important part, when all of our nurses, all of our clinicians do adhere with it, but there is a chance of letting it out wherein the complications can be reduced. First, let us understand, why do we flush? ACL of flushing. Why do we flush? We will be flushing the catheter to access the catheter, whether it is in a good function or a great function, to clear the debris, or name it anything. You give in a medication, you give total parenteral nutrition, CT contrast has been given, blood has been transfused in order to clear the pathway we give in flushing. Next, locking the catheter when it is not in use. You are sending back this patient home with this catheter, you wanted to lock the catheter, you actually do flushing. So what are the ACLs? It is nothing but we access, clear, and lock. Okay. I also want all of you to understand the difference between these things. One is priming, another one is flushing, another one is locking. Priming, a simple technique wherein we wanted to let out the air. Say you have a IV set, you wanted to let out the air before connecting, you prime the catheter with normal line. You put in a center line, and it is filled with air. You wanted to let out all the air out, you prime the catheter with normal line. That is called as priming. Next terminology what we use is called flushing the lines. Flushing is definitely with normal line, 0.9% of preloaded or normal line, with 10 cc syringe between, before, after giving any medication, which is widely practiced across. So it is really appreciated when we flush these lines. Next comes in locking. Post flushing, if you wanted to lock the lumen or the catheter, and you don't want to use this catheter for longer period of time, so that it prevent from occlusion, prevent from blood entry. So we lock it with heparin, which is okay, readily available in the market as well. It's called hep lock or hep flush, name it anything. So you wanted to lock it, you lock it with heparin post flushing. So these are the few terminology we use here most frequently. Next, when you talk about flushing and locking, which is very much important, and I do believe, and I we have actually practiced across. One is, we will need to understand the frequency of flushing of any of these central lines. When do we need to flush? What is the sequence of flushing? A sequence which is called, which is there in INS, is SAS, which is SAS technique, and SASH, which is called a SASH technique. So SAS is nothing but, if you wanted to give in a fluid, medication, two medication at the same time, we will need to flush the catheter with saline, S, administer the medication, A, again flush the catheter with saline, S, again administer, and then flush the catheter. That is called a SAS technique. So before, between, after giving medications, not only medications, blood transfusion, infusion, TPN, anything you given, pre, between, and post needs to be flushed with what? Normal saline. Again, locking. What do you use for flushing, locking? So we ideally need to use, it should be used as like the normal line, and for locking, it is better to go ahead. It is definitely to go ahead with heparin for locking. Okay, what is a syringe we will need to use for accessing any catheter? Never use any syringe which is less than 10 cc. The reason, 10 the syringe, the 10 ml or 10 cc syringe create less pressure while giving in anything, whereas 5 to 3 1 cc syringe, pressure created while giving any medication will be very high. this can tamper, which this can manipulate, this can actually break any of your center lines. So so we will need to ideally not use any of these lines, any of these syringes which is less than 10 cc. How much flush should I have to use, or how much flush volume you will have to use for giving any of these medication? Another question which definitely we'll have, which we will actually will be thinking of what needs to be done in terms of adult before medication, giving medication after medication. If it is not viscous, can give in 10 ml flush. Yes, if you're giving any viscous infusate like blood products, albumin, TPN, anything, it is better to give in 20 ml before, between, and after. How do you flush? A technique which is practiced, and it is only intended when we give in flush. It is not used while giving medication, while we given any what you called fluids, while we given any TPNs, or if you are giving heparin. Not to use push pause. Push pause or turbulent method is only practiced while you give in flush. So finally, exercises which is practiced. Okay, we talk about flushing technique, pulsating technique, which is ideally practiced. Pre-filled versus non-pre-filled syringes, chances of infection is actually very low comparatively. There is a study, and there is another technique, the same thing is called as pulsating technique. Staccato technique is also widely used, wherein a vigorous push pause can be done, and this can primarily clear the catheter residual medication inside the catheter, and it also causes a turbulence. I do have a very very short video on it, which I will be demonstrating you on when we given a flush with a push pause or a staccato technique. How does the debris get into our the bloodstream, and how does it clear the entire bloodstream? Okay, so this is the technique which I was actually mentioning, the SAS technique. Okay, here I have how do we flush using a push
Then
pause.
flush the PICC with normal saline using push-pause method.
You connect the catheter. We will also have to ensure that it has been clamped if you have a clamp. So this is the technique what we use, push and pause, push and pause. This is ideally used when we given a medication. So this should not be used when we give it, when we give a flush. It should not be used when we given a medication or anything. So yes, so this is push pause
Then
technique.
flush the PICC with normal saline.
Next is locking with heparin. How do we lock?
Lock the PICC with heparinized saline.
We will not do push pause. Instead, we give in a positive pressure. While giving in a positive pressure, and it has to be clamped
reassess the
and
patient.
then removed.
Finally,
Make sure-
discard your equipment and lock the PICC.
Make sure that we will need to lock all these catheters. Lock in the sense clamp all these catheters if it is not in use, and also we will need to clamp while removing syringes, removing IV set, removing whatever set we connected. We will need to clamp the catheter if the catheter has got a clamp in it, and then remove it. The reason is it will reduce the chances of blood reflex once you remove. So if when you remove, there is a chance of blood reflex, while like negative pressure will be created. So to prevent that, clamp the catheter and then remove the syringe nor the IV set or any other set which is being fixed with the catheter. Here is a video I would like to actually show you how the flushing technique works.
Or vessel contributing.
It's an animated video which shows when you given a flush using a push pause technique, and how does that clear the debris. So this is the debris which is there inside the catheter, and this is there inside the bloodstream. And now the nurse is giving a normal line flush using a push pause technique, And
delivered
let's
over
see
3
what
to
is
5
happening
seconds,
inside the
or
vein
2
when
to
this
2.5
push
mils
pause
per second,
using a 10
which,
cc
when compared
syringe
to
has
the
been
normal rate
done.
of blood flow, is very
This is
fast.
nothing but the Normus line.
This quick
It is ready, it
pulsatile
is
flush
waiting.
may
Now
be
it is
effective
getting
at
flushed.
rinsing the internal surface of the catheter, but it isn't so
Okay,
kind to the vessel
so it's
wall
removing
and blood
all the
components.
debris
The
by
shear force
creating
created
a
by the flush
turbulent
causes
flow
turbulence
inside the
and
vein,
recirculation at the
so that
catheter
all
tip
the debris which
that
is there
forces the
inside the
platelets and blood cells to collide
catheter.
with each other.
Also, there are
And
few
in line with
debris which is there
Newton's
outside the
third law,
catheter, as
the
well as the
reaction
platelets
has an
which
equal
is
and
there
opposite
near to the
reaction.
catheter gets flushed off.
The resulting stress and
So
inflammation cause
this is
the
what it
endothelium
happens.
in
This
the
is
presence
what
of the
will
catheter
happen
further
when you
encourages
give in a
coagulation
flush
and thrombus
using a
formation,
10 cc
which
syringe,
increases the
and
risk
then the
of IV failure.
push pause method is
It
also
could be
applied
that
together.
the quick flush,
Hello
while
everyone,
good for
and thank
rinsing
you
the
for
catheter,
Okay. Finally, I would like also to talk about the VAT team creation. Most of all, the hospital will have a VAT team or a CVAT team, which starts from team led. You will have all these clinicians, all these specialty doctors, nurses together. The team will be handling central lines in terms of dressing change, in terms of hand holding, in terms of complication handling. If we have a team inside the hospital, definitely there is a chances of reduction of complications as well as infection rate. So there was a study which there is a study which has happened across, and wherein we have also seen that the nurse-led team did reduce the chances of complication, wherein cost, insertion rate, and complication rate has been reduced. So, finally, helpful tips to have the compliance towards implementing all these bundle: education, education, education. Nothing more than that. That should be a mantra. Feedback from all of your staffs on clinical impacts from it would be better. Implementing and adhering to the checklist. So, as I always ask my nurses, is this a checklist or a tick list? Definitely, tick list one day will change to checklist. So, checklist for all these procedures in terms of line handling is ideally appreciated. Feedbacks. So, the feedback should be in all of your nursing stations. What has happened? What have you implemented to reduce the chances if there is any complications? And of course, a practitioner's view, your clinicians, your specialist view on this. And then comes the bundle, getting used of all of these newer nurses who comes in, joins in, they'll have to get in use of all these bundle practices, bundle approaches. And when all these culture change in, definitely you will have zero chances of infection, and all your boards will look zero. There's no infection in your hospital. So this is what we are actually looking into. I think by this I have come to the end of the presentation. Right now I am open for questions. Yes. I think there are few questions in the chat box. Okay, so there is one question by Miss Reena Nair, I believe. No, we have 5 ml. Now we have 5 ml heparin syringe, which is the same diameter of the 10 ml. Yes, of course, we have. So there are preloaded normal saline, which is there in the market. Uh, Wherein we actually can use it because it does the diameter of 5 ml is equivalent to the 10 ml diameter. But when I talk about the conventional syringe, if you use a conventional which is not preloaded and we will need to use it for giving away all these flushes, it is better to use 10 cc rather than 5 cc. If you have a preloaded, you can use 3, 5, 10 cc can be used. What if you wanted to give in medication for 0.3 ml, which of the same syringe? Okay, so okay, worst case scenario, what I have seen is if you wanted to give in medication which is less than 0.5 ml, wherein we cannot use a 10 ml, it is better to connect it with a 10 centimeter add-on devices. You can connect it with an add-on, given the medication, flush the catheter. Post medication, we need to flush the catheter, and then you can use it. But it is better not to practice it. But worst case scenario, we will need to use it. Yes, add-on devices or on add-on catheters can be add-on devices, which is a 10 centimeter extension, can be actually connected to all of these lines, which can actually use it. Okay, Groshong valve PICC lines from BD doesn't have clamp. Yes, Groshong, which is a closed-ended catheter, do not have clamps, definitely. But while removing a syringe, it is better. What we can do is we can actually wait. So the clamp, the Groshong valve act in such a way that you will need some time to close it. So when we given a flush, wait for post giving a flush or heparin or medication, wait for 3 seconds, allow the valve to close, then you remove the syringe or whatever it is. Better to do that. So this can be practiced. Single lumen PICC catheter not having, yeah. So single lumen few catheter, as I mentioned, the Groshong ones, which is there in the bucket, or the closed ended catheter, the valve catheter doesn't have a clamp. But if you have a clamp, we will need to clamp every time. If there is a clamp, we will need to clamp the catheter while removing any of syringes or your IV set, anything. And also there is something I would I also wanted to highlight is, if you use a conventional syringe apart from preloaded normosaline, preloaded heparin, if we use a conventional syringe or a 10 cc syringe, if you wanted to give a heparin or a hep lock, it is highly appreciated. You can actually take out minimal. Say for example, if you wanted to give 3 ml hep lock, you can take 4 ml Heplock in a 10 cc syringe, give only 3 ml and stop in 1 ml. This will reduce the reflex, or this will reduce the chances of negative reflex which is coming, because the plunger which is there in the syringe can go and hit the catheter and it can cause a negative reflex. So it is really appreciated if you actually use or stop. But disclaimer is, do not use it during when you given a medication using a 10 ml, kindly give it fully. Only when you actually give flush or heparin, you stop in 1 ml and then you remove, only if you use a conventional syringe. And also something else I wanted to highlight is, when you give in a heparin is only intended for locking the catheter. If it is used only for locking the catheter, every other central line, the dead space which is there in the central line is actually very less. Okay, say central lines, though it is, if you see a central line, it might be very long, but the dead space inside the central line is either less than 1 ml or nearby close to 1 ml, or maximum it will be 2 ml. When you understand the dead space of the catheter, then you can actually give in the heparin. You can give the heparin flush. So you need not give heparin flush or heparin lock not more than 2 ml if you wanted to lock the catheter. So if you wanted to lock the catheter with 2 ml, take 3 ml, lock it with 2 ml and stop in 1 ml. So yes. If blockage, can we flush the catheter or not? And the line is also okay. If there is a blockage, kindly do not flush the catheter, because again there is an occlusion which might go into the into the bloodstream. Again, it's again highly dangerous. So it is better to assess, give it to the experts while doing it. Yes, of course, but manipulation or removing of blockages is done. And what else you can do is, you can create a vacuum, take out the blockage, and then you can use it. So it is better not to manipulate it, but understand how big is the blockage. Is it at the end of the catheter, or only while understanding that we can actually do it. Depends upon each line to line. How frequently do you advise dressing of PICC lines? PICC lines, if you're sending back the patient once in 7 days, maximum 8, not more than that. That is what INS or CDC says. So as I mentioned, first dressing after insertion for 24 to 48 hours, first dressing can be done. After then, if the patient needs to come in for dressing is like once in 7 days is ideally practice in most of the other hospital, as well as that is what the international bodies also say. Do we have a certified training course in our organization? We do have certified training course for CVAT. uh, yeah, you can actually let's see like how we can do it across. We have a training module. Next question is, if line is okay and flushing is also going well, but there's no backflow coming. This might be because of a few reasons. So, as if I am able to understand this question, if the line is okay, you have a forward flow, but there is no backflow. This might be because of multiple reasons. First reason is you might have a small biofilm formation or a small what do you call it, line, but a small film formation at the end of the catheter which might block while you exert a negative pressure, or the line might be over the valve, or the line might hit at the side of the valve. So while you have all these complications, it's better to take an x-ray, understand where the line, because I've seen migration of line into your internal jugular vein in terms of PICC line. So we will need to understand and then act accordingly. Definitely it might be because of multiple reason, and it will change uh, in person to person. So okay. Hmm. When chemoport is not used, okay, when the chemo port is not in use, what is the requirement of flushing? So if the chemo port is not in use, according to the guidelines, every 28 day once the line needs to be flushed. So that is what the best practices says. But what I have seen across is like they have, in few of the hospitals, they come in every 3 months once, but it is really appreciated if they come in every 28 a month once to clear, to flush, to lock all these catheter. Okay. What is the mechanism? Okay, the line is okay. What is the mechanism of locking? Why heparin is used? There in terms of open-ended catheter, ideally, what we do is we actually flush the catheter with normal line, and we lock it with heparin. The reason why we do is to prevent backflow or prevent the entry of blood into the catheter, and also it reduces the chances of occlusion. That is what we follow in India. But if you ask me, the data studies at present, we don't have any studies that heparin will reduce the chances of blockage, but we do practice it across. It can be widely used in open-ended catheters, and when you send the patient back home, the patient comes in every 7 days once. It can be practiced, wherein a closed-ended catheters, like as I mentioned, Grosjean, you need not use heparin, wherein a simple normal saline can ideally be practiced while giving flush or locking. What do you mean by positive and negative pressure? Okay, so positive pressure is nothing but while handling a central line, you given anything, you given a medication, fluid, into the catheter, wherein you will need to push something into the catheter. That is where positive pressure exert. Negative pressure is nothing but you take out something, you access the line by, you collect blood from the catheter, is called as negative pressure. So those are the two pressure which will be exerted while doing this. Okay, if I am, do we have time for questions, or if you could tell me that, we can actually.
Actually, I'm seeing that the questions are not stopping and you are relentlessly taking it up. I think you have done most. Probably there's one question that you can address is, after giving SDP cryo, is flushing required?
Flushing of all these catheters definitely required. No matter whatever we given, definitely the reason is it can block the catheter in central lines. When I talk about central lines, because you wanted to use it again, you wanted to use it for any of the other medication needs to be done. But if you're not using the catheter, if you wanted to pull it off, it is better not to flush. Need, the
Yeah, and
catheter.
I think you already answered this one. So the 0.5 ml, 0.3 ml injections, I think it can be safely still given in 2 ml syringe with a slow IV push technique. Is that correct?
Yes. So slow IV technique can also be done. Also, you can actually connect it using a connector. The reason is when you connect a connector, the pressure will be exerted only in the connector, leaving the
Yeah.
central line. So that is where you can give in this and then flush the catheter definitely, because only 0.3 ml it will be deposited only in the add-on devices. So it is better to flush. If the flushing is recommended, flush it and then it is ready to use.
So great. So the point I think that you're making is that we never, I mean, most of our staff, when there is forward flow is difficult, they push with 1 ml syringe, 2 ml syringe, and they are very happy that they've relieved the obstruction. That is something that we are not supposed to do, is the message to be taken across,
Yes,
right?
100%. Yes, Dr. Dharani. It is better not to push if you have a small differences in when you push, if you think there is no push, it is better to wait, create a negative pressure, create a small vacuum. It is better to take out everything and then. So ideally to 1 cc syringe, 2 cc syringe, even if you flush it with that, chances of catheter damage is high. What if the catheter gets damaged and goes into the bloodstream? So if you ask me, has it happened? Yes, definitely it has happened. Wherein IR needs to be involved while removing that. So it is better not to do it. Give it to the experts.
Yeah, completely agree. And there's one question that how frequently can we do flushing in a day to prevent CLABSI? I don't think to prevent an infection there is a guideline. Is there any?
No. There is no prevention guidelines for like flushing. Only you will need to flush if it is not in use. If you have a patient with none of any of your, the patient is there ideal in your hospital, you are not using the catheter. Okay, there and
Yeah.
when you can actually flush the catheter every shift. Okay, if there is okay, you have, for example, let me take this way. You have a catheter center line with 3 lumens. Okay, and only 2 lumen is used and 1 lumen is not used. Okay, so that lumen is not used for the entire day, but we wanted to maintain the patency of that lumen. In that incidences, what you can do is you can flush the line every shift. You have 3 shift, morning, afternoon, and night, and again 8 hourly. Maybe 8 hourly can be considered if the line or the lumen is not in use. But again, if it is not in use, you are sending back the patient home. The patient wants to come in for 7. You can ask the patient come in every 7th day and then do the flushing. You need not ask the patient to do flushing every day at home. So it is not in use. You need not like flush, or else yes. So hope I have answered the question. I do not
Yeah,
confuse.
agree. And there is nothing to, avoid infection. There is nothing. And
All these bundles should be practiced together so that
yeah,
it prevents infection. Not flushing doesn't. There is no thing states that
exactly. The
flushing
more
will
important
reduce
thing is the hand washing, hand hygiene. Yeah.
100%. Yes.
Okay. I think with that, there are a lot of questions. I think this is the most interactive session I have ever posted. Thank you so much, Anisha. And
Thank you.
thank you
Thank
to
you,
all
Dr.
the
Dani.
participants who have stayed longer and, being very interactive and making this session more lively. And we'll try to have more sessions periodic basis with your team. I am sincerely believing that it will be very useful for the practicing nurses.
Sure.
There
Thank
are
you so
no
much.
more
Thank you,
comments.
everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think people are still asking. So, how to collect sample from central line to prevent erroneous reports?
Sorry.
So, I think, there is a habit of, withdrawing amount of blood, say 3 to 5 ml, and then taking the next aliquot for sampling. That usually is being done. And some people prefer to push the initial 3-5 ml back, and some people prefer to discard. That depends, of course, on the age of the child, weight of the child, and the underlying blood volume. So all that has to be considered. So,
Again,
but whatever we
when
do, yeah,
if you wanted to push back this blood again, if you are collecting it very closely, it is okay. But again, because there is again a series of chances of, once it is out of the closed system, you will have complications. So I think we will
Yeah,
Again,
completely. So,
leave it to
I
the
mean, the general consensus is that not to push back as much as
Yes.
possible. But in very young babies, sometimes we are forced to, but we have to be very sure about the asepsis. And yeah, I think patient goes to MRI taking SDP, cryo, infusion set falls, etc. So in such cases, how many times flushing can be done maximum? So is there any maximum limit for flushing?
Only until unless the patient is compromised with fluids. If the patient has got what do you call it? Compromised with fluids or something, we can actually do not have any maximum. You can actually flush it accordingly, as I mentioned before, between after 10 ml flush. So, and there is also something else which I have come across is like, say, if you have this patient with continuous TPN, continuous blood transfusion, it's really appreciated if you flush the line, if the patient has not got any compromise in fluids, it's highly appreciated if you flush these lines once in, I mean, fourth hourly. This will promote the flow of any medication fluids or TPN or the blood transfusion through the central line, and it will have a proper what do you call flow rate. So that is ideal. There is no maximum flush can be given until unless patient has fluid overload or something. Yes.
Sure. And they've also asked if PICC line culture is taken, then ideally when this line can be utilized again.
We will have to. It is a case-based scenario, ma'am.
So yeah, so as clinicians, I think, ma'am, Dr. Dina, so we usually use the lines if the child is stable and not very severely neutropenic, we do continue to use the line. And only when we get a culture alert or when the child is severely neutropenic and have features of septic shock, we do close the line. Some cases we do use antibiotic lock for 48 hours until we get the culture, if based on if it's gram negative or gram positive, and then take a call. So again, as she said, it's a case-to-case basis. But severely neutropenic BMT patients who have shown in features of early septic shock to begin with the septic shower, we usually try to remove the line. Otherwise, we lock the line for 48 to 72 hours with the antibiotic. Then we restart once the child is afebrile for at least 72 hours. So Dr. Wahid has asked any comment on StatLock skin irritation. Yeah, we have actually come across a lot of things. In fact, we have had bad, fungal excoriations when the StatLock is in situ for more than 17 days. Yes, Anisha.
Yeah. So, even I have seen in few other hospitals as well, especially for pediatric group. What can be done? Definitely, if you are compatible with the stabilization, if you are not compatible with stabilization device, what also can be done is like few things which I have observed certain areas is once we clean the site, we will need to wait until it's dry, then apply the skin protectant, and then place the stat lock or the sutureless devices. And when next time when we actually have this, we will need to. It is better to change the site as well, so that it promotes the healing. But definitely for a longer period of time, sometimes it causes very few set of patients has got irritation depending upon where they are, especially, I mean, since we are also at the coastal areas, the perspiration is really high. If all of these are not adhered properly, yeah, chances of skin irritation is also there. Therein we will be not using a sutureless device for all these patients, definitely.
Thank you. So can we need heparin flush for peritoneal port? I'm not understanding. So Anisha,
There is
you
a
have any?
port which is, flushing any central line. So the port which is there in the peritoneal, which has been fixed in the peritoneal region, name it anything, name it a central venous devices or vascular access devices which is used for giving medication, we will need to flush the lines. Flush the lines with normal line and lock it with heparin, no matter where it is. So definitely peritoneal ports, shoulder ports. I think in India I've come across shoulder ports as well as arm ports. Since all these are vascular access devices, so you will need to flush the line with normal saline and lock it with heparin. Yes.
Thank you. And how to give antibiotic lock? Antibiotic lock. Basically, we have a protocol for each and every drug. For gram-negative bacilli, we use amikacin in common. For gram-positive, usually we use ciprofloxacin or even ceftazidime. There are many drugs can be used. And there is a specific concentration of each drug that has to be diluted. And then we instill 2 to 3 ml in each lumen of the port or pick with the final concentration based on the drug. So there are guidelines available online which you can search. So some patients coming for PICC pump removal, a request for PICC line flush with heparin, is it needed?
So pick pump would be maybe a few patients with Folfox, they connected with a vacuum. I believe the same thing maybe she would have mentioned. So pick line definitely, as I mentioned, flush it with normal line and then you can lock it with heparin. Because heparin flushing is not intended for it is not should not be practiced because heparin when you talk about heparin flushes, okay, so all these comes in so many different vials and all these ampules. It is preloaded and everything. So heparin, say flush has got all these components. One is heparin, you have distilled water, you have benzyl alcohol and normal saline, a little amount of normal saline. So you have all these components. So the patient might be receiving a medication. What if you flush with all these components can, one, damage your vein, two, it will not let out all the debris which is there inside the line. Third thing is like intended, so intention of flushing the line is compromised, and it can definitely cause futuristically a reaction because heparin is a drug. You have benzyl alcohol in it with also distilled water is not intended for flushing as well. It's an hypotonic solution. So flush it with normal saline, you can lock it with heparin as per your hospital protocol. So yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. I think the discussion would never end. I think Reena ma'am again asked for transfusions like SDP cryo, how many times should we flush? I think as she mentioned, there is no upper limit as long as the patient can carry the fluids. Is that right, Anisha?
Yes. So if the patient is receiving continuous blood transfusion, cryo, whatever it is, you can flush the line. As I mentioned, 4th hourly it is better. But it's
Yeah.
continuous only. If it is not continuous, you can flush it at the end, before and at the end. So that is actually appreciated. Yes.
Thank you so much, Anisha. I think
Thank you
we've
so much.
overshot the time, and I can definitely see how inviting this topic is because of the number of participants who stayed till the end. So we'll surely plan to have more sessions on the topic in the months to come. Thank you once again, Anisha, for your very informative session and taking up all the questions patiently and educating all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Dharani, for the wonderful opportunity. I think this is the only platform wherein I can actually see people, I think, across India, I believe. So, thank you so much. Since I don't have my video, there is some glitches over here. I couldn't switch on my video, but still, thank you so much. I think let's connect later, maybe with another session of the same. Yes. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for participating and making it more meaningful. I hand over the session to Manisha. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Dharini. With this, I'm closing this session. And before closing the session, I request all the participants to give your feedback. I have posted the link in the chat box, so please give your feedback for the session. And I'll just close this session within 2 minutes. Thank you.